Welcome to Subscription Prescription, the podcast where you get the information you need to scale your subscription program. Hello and welcome to another dose of Subscription Prescription, the podcast where we help you figure out everything related to D2C subscriptions. I'm really excited to be joined by today's guest, Eric Roush. He's the founder of New Standard Co., a retention agency that is absolutely crushing it for brands. He's also one of the few people on Twitter who I have not silenced. I actually pay attention to his posts. He's a smart guy, talks about LTV, talks about the full business cycle. Eric, thanks for coming on the pod.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for not muting me.
Yes, I really don't have too many people muted. That was a little bit more hyperbole than anything. But Eric, I'd love for you to tell everybody here that's listening or watching a little bit more about yourself and what is New Standard Co.
Great question. I've been in the retention space for over a decade now, working with startups and Fortune 500 companies over the course of those 10 years. New Standard started about 18 months ago. It is a holistic retention agency. We aren't just an email and estimate agency. We holistically work on 8, 9, and 10-figure brands where we troubleshoot, solve, and strategize on actual e-commerce problems and not just execute your email and SMS sends, but we're talking about lifetime value. We're talking about subscription rates and rebills. We're talking about conversion rates on your websites. So we are a strategic partner. We are not an email and SMS agency, and we are a year and a half old.
I love that. Yeah. So do you see that as like a trend in the space where you're seeing more agencies that are starting to tackle more of the strategy, not just the tactical execution side of it? Or is it just something where you've seen, like, if you really want to be successful at delivering retention value, you need to be doing that?
Well, yeah, we definitely are seeing both. And let's say one side is going to be impacted by AI more than the other, right? If you're in that execution space, extremely tactical, not that much strategic, there is a great place for you, but AI is coming at a much faster rate for your skill set. The strategic agencies that we work with, partner with, and chat with really try to solve much larger holistic retention problems, which is then tied into your acquisition problems and then your business problems overall. It's not just sending an email and SMS. It's like, how does this fit into the bigger picture of the whole space? And we found great success to that. We also really pride ourselves in working with household names that people know and respect. We think it's more fun for us and the people who work with us. And we only hire senior level strategists, designers, implementers, and all that. So our business model really isn't foundationally functional for any brand doing, let's say, less than 10 million a year annually.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. So I've got a question for you then, because I feel like I already kind of know how you're going to respond to it based on what you just said. But one of my favorite questions to ask people online or in person is, and this is coming, keep in mind, I am a subscription guy, I'm a retention guy, but which is more important, acquisition or retention, and why?
If I had to say it, I would say acquisition, but it's really a yin and yang in every capacity, right? If you acquire people in a leaky bucket, you're done. If you only retain people and don't acquire any new people, you're done in a little bit of a longer time, but you're going to be done regardless. So it really just depends on the brands. For the subscription people, sure, let's say retention, but there's a lot of people who say retention is number one, and most of their numbers are revolved around the paid team kicking butt and driving in new customers for you. And if you have no customers to market, then you can't have any retention. So
when you mentioned that, like how you acquire customers when you're talking about services and your strategies, that's what made me think of, because we had a client where they didn't want us to touch like their buy box, their subscription offer. And I just felt like, well, you're making me fight with two hands tied behind my back, because I can actually improve your retention by doing a better offer up front. So
yes,
it's definitely something we're seeing in the space as well. Like, if you want to be impactful, you need to start with acquisition, who you're acquiring, how you're acquiring. So I love that you're thinking along the same.
Yeah, but I mean, this too. In the subscription space, it's critically important for both teams to work together, because you're rebill rates and your churn reduction is entirely revolves around expectation setting, which is done on the acquisition side. So if I'm over promising and we're under delivering as a product, then it doesn't really matter what the retention team is going to say, because the product isn't really working to what the person bought. But if you're working together, you know that, hey, these are our win back reasons. These are why people cancel. These are why people stay. These are the effects that we're getting from, our research and development team. They all need to be correlated. So on the acquisition side, people know exactly what they're signing up for via their money. And the retention team can then reinforce, you're paying for this. These are the results you're supposed to be getting. These are when you're supposed to be getting them. And all of that is cyclical. And if the two teams aren't talking to each other, it's just a disjointed customer experience.
Can you think of a couple of examples or ideas where you're seeing that tied together, where the reason why somebody buys, like, how are you enforcing that is that like through welcome flows? Is that onboarding, unboxing? Like, love to hear your strategy on that, because I just love you. It's about expectation. Totally right. So make some promises. How are you on the retention side making sure that those promises, other than of course the product itself, that those expectations are being reminded, reiterated, stressed, all those things?
Yeah. So the acquisition team is typically going to have some high performing ads. And if you're really granular with it, they go to specific landing pages, which then can be triggered on specific onboarding flows. The welcome flow, at least in my world, is people who have given their email address and are not paying subscribers yet. The onboarding flow are people who have given their email, have purchased the product, and are now being onboarded onto the M1, M2, M3 in perpetuity subscription program. So two very different things. We call it onboarding for subscription brands, which people otherwise call it post-purchase. But it's very clear and necessary to delineate what those two mean. And the acquisition funnels churn into the welcome series, which can be done in obviously email, SMS, or your abandoned carts and things like that, or your general campaigns. So what are people signing up for that they didn't get from the first time on the website, where they didn't convert right away from the paid ad? So they saw a paid ad that sparked some sort of customer benefit that got them to subscribe to email, not the product.
Right.
Then they didn't convert the first time around. Why? They are looking to get what information from you that they didn't get, whether that is a claim, whether that is a testimonial, whether that is social proof, whether that is a discount, right? Something. Then they get onboarded via the welcome flow to hit the things in sequence that they may or may not have converted on. If it's, let's say, a welcome kit, email number 1 could be welcome kit. Email number 2 could be social proof. Email number 3 could be more research and data. Email number 4 could be a reminder of that welcome kit that you have. Then if you go into actual onboarding, that's really correlated with what the R&D team tells you is the product experience for the customer. So you need to be talking with your customer service team. You need to be talking to your R&D team to figure out, if I were to take this product, do I take it every day? Do I take it once a week? When do I take it? If I were to take it in that best practice type of mentality, what do I feel tangibly and when? And then your onboarding experience should reflect, hey, it's day 7. You're supposed to have taken it 7 times. If you have taken it 7 times, this is what you should be experiencing. And then you can do some subtle reinforcements with testimonials and reviews of, I've taken this for a week. I feel fantastic. This is what I'm experiencing. And again, you just want to remind that daily routine to the customer, you need to take this every day.
Okay. First of all, for anybody listening at home, like Eric just did that, like shooting from the hip, which I thought was amazing, especially when you're doing welcome flow email examples as well as onboarding. I'm really curious, because you're talking about onboarding and you've built out, I know tons of these. Do you feel like it's, how sophisticated is this in the sense of, like, or I should say not sophisticated, how complex do you feel like this is? Because sometimes I feel like brands, even big brands, 9-figure brands, just miss just basic explanations for how the product works. Sorry, when you're setting up somebody, obviously you're working with bigger brands often. Is it sometimes just oversimplifying it for them, or like, keeping it simple, stupid, or is there an element of like, oh, you guys are missing this one tiny little point you're not making.
Mhm.
It's going to transform the business. Where do you fall on that kind of like push and pull of what to create from an email standpoint?
Yeah, first of all, I love the phrase keep it simple, stupid. Brands love to overcomplicate things. As you know, in this world, a CMO or a CEO or whatever goes to some random conference with somebody speaking who hasn't been in an account in a decade. They hear the word personalization. They come back. They're like, you need to personalize. And the email team is like, what does that mean? Right. And there's a yin and yang to personalization, and there's a rabbit hole that you can go down. It's really important to know if you're working on a brand, are they a one SKU subscription product? Are they a multi SKU subscription product of that same quote, quote SKU? Or do they have a myriad of things that they could be subscribed to? And then the question is your data reflective of that? If I subscribe to product X, but you're giving me an onboarding experience because of generic product Y, there's going to be a huge disconnect from the customer experience. So it's really important to break down what is the product that they subscribe to, what is the ideal customer experience should they do it or take it or consume it or whatever in this amount of time. And then you need to be very clear with them in very layman's term of this is what you should be experiencing and how and why. We did that with AG1, which we're really proud of. Is AG1 has a general population of subscribers. They have these personas that they built that I can't really get into, but they have a general population of people who are just looking for a greens powder, and they have health optimizers, which are people who are just religiously following the Hubermans of the world and trying to understand the data and science behind it. So you're talking to one person who may or may not be in like an IQ bracket of genius level, and you're talking to one person who may or may not be in the IQ level of like, I took some college and I dropped out or whatever it is. And you need to be able to explain to these people, this is the very basic terms of like what's happening to your body. And then the people who are the Hubermans of the world are going to be like, great, I want more. I want to tell my friends about this like protocol that I'm in. And so we had to work with the R&D team for AG1 to what we called scale the conversation, which meant here's your high school explanation of it. Here's your college graduate explanation of it. And here's your PhD level explanation of it. So whatever level you were on, you can understand intuitively, like this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it.
Were you doing that by segmenting like separate emails and trying to segment audiences, or was it kind of more like read more within the email? Like, hey, here's a blur. You read more about the science, or maybe both.
You could have done it by segmentation, but then you would have had to qualify the people who would have fallen into that segmentation, which for AG1 we didn't do and didn't have. You can certainly do that with zero-party data. But we actually put it in the creative, and it was a nice little infographic that our awesome design team did, which literally said scale the conversation. And it said high school level on one end and collegiate level on the other, or PhD level on the other. And underneath it had the 3 explanations on what was going on in your body. So you could technically read them all and abort when you understood it.
Were you finding that also you get people that were maybe in the casual, I just need to get my greens in, but now they're actually feeling a little bit compelled to like want to up their game and pay more attention to what's happening?
Yeah, what we discovered when we were talking with AG1 is how do people, if I'm drinking AG1 right now, actually I'm just water, but it's a cup. But if you were to drink it at work, let's say on your 3rd day, and a coworker came up to you and was like, oh, what's that you're drinking, right? You've heard of AG1, you've seen it or whatever. How do you, as whoever you are in the spectrum, explain to that person who asked you what the heck AG1 is and what it's doing? And we wanted to make it very clear for people in the first month because, as you know, humans are both inquisitive and they're also generally haters, let's say. And so there's a lot of people who would maybe tell people that like they're drinking bro science, for example, right? Like that's not what I heard on Joe Rogan or whatever it is. And we wanted to arm people who were taking it and were very cautious in the first week or not really ingrained in the routine. Like, hey, if someone were to ask you what this is what you can say it is. And now you're educated and you're educating other people, and it's all an empowering conversation. But that was all through just talking with the R&D team and figuring out, like, if my mom asks me what AG1 is, how do I tell her what AG1 is in a 30-second pitch?
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting because we often are buying for something that we maybe don't quite understand ourselves, right? Like whether it's aspirational, we're seeing somebody else do it. Maybe we are doing a ton of research. But I also was just thinking as you're explaining that, it's like, what do I explain to my wife why I've just spent this money on this product? Like, what is this actually going to do for me or for my life?
This is $90 a month. Why are you doing it? Right? And you're like, honey, it's working, I swear.
But I love that because you're talking about that. It's like, it's interesting because you're arming people with information on how to talk about the product, which lends itself to potentially like referrals and other things, whether you can track, like, yes, it's a way to track that. But I think a great brand is just trying to enable conversations in every place that they can. But you are also educating people. Like, this is what's happening. This is why. This is what you need to know. That's really, really cool. I've never quite heard it explained that way. I really like that.
You need to know like what you're subscribing to, right? Because if it is in some percentage performative of like, look how healthy and look how great I am.
Right.
You want to be able to speak to that functionally to someone else.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's like if I'm buying a skincare thing, like I still can't name the ingredients on the skincare stuff that I use. I just, I know that it works and they've combined some stuff together and it works for me. So when I explain it, I just say, hey, this is just the best skincare I've used. And it's, made for,
I look great.
Yeah. It's working a lot better than what I was doing before. However, similar, like I'm thinking like for a brand like that, it's like, if you start to explain a little bit about why some of these products work and hey, as a guy, you might not know how to talk about skincare. This is some of the things you could explain. It's a really interesting opportunity. I'm going to send this clip to a former client that I use their skincare. Okay. So I'm just kind of curious, like inside the retention space, whether this is applying to subscription brands or not, what are some tactics or things that you're seeing? Like, are there any things that you're seeing brands not doing that they need to be doing, or you've started to notice a couple things that are really winning for some brands that other people should be paying attention to? Just curious if anything comes to mind in that area.
A few things come to mind. Interestingly enough, the answer to that is some brands are very siloed to where the social team does one thing, the paid team does another thing, the website team is doing another thing, and the retention team is doing another thing. That is potentially a factor of remote work post-COVID, or it's just agency overload or whatever it is. But there really is a less impactful world of integrated marketing that exists now that I didn't think existed in like 2019 when I was doing it.
Yeah.
So people don't really know what's going on. They don't share best practices. They don't share with, even on the same team, this is what is working best for paid right now. So the majority of people coming into the ecosphere have been told this tagline, which is working very well. Let's make sure the website reflects that. Let's make sure our organic social reflects that. Let's make sure our email onboarding reflects that. If it's a disjointed experience, people are going to have a disjointed experience. And then on top of all of that, really measuring for incrementality is something that I'm not seeing a ton of brands doing. If you go into an account, we audit accounts all the time. The A/B testing structure is very weak. Sometimes people are just A/B testing subject lines, which drives me insane. I think that's the lowest form of strategic expertise you can provide. But the subscription space particularly, if you're not testing for a reduction of churn or an increase in rebill, which is same but different, right? They're like, what are you doing that for a fact is increasing the brand's LTV? And that could be on any side, right? If the paid team is bringing in a bunch of people with these claims that don't really make sense, but it's driving up first-time purchasers who are then canceling right away, your ad is performing in acquisition, but it's not performing in LTV. Right. Same as email. If you change, let's say, your rebill email to say something and it spikes churn, do you know it's spiking churn versus the baseline if you're not A/B testing that with profile properties, or you're just assuming it based on like data comps, time period over time period that isn't truly correlated? So it's a lack of sophisticated testing. and it's a lack of integrated communications with the team that people just aren't doing cross-functional work anymore.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting too. You might just be the second person I've talked to that runs an email agency, and I talked to quite a few where you're testing to reduce the churn rate from your rebilling emails and SMS, because that's something often we get hired to come in and do, but we don't usually rarely replace an email agency. We're actually trying to work side by side. So that's what happened. We had a new client hired a full-time email agency. And when they told me that's something they were going to be focusing on, it kind of blew me away. I was like, wow, okay. Because usually it's all about everything up until that point. Like once rebills and stuff like that happen, it's more about repurchase rates. The thing. So one, I love that. And two, like you harped on one of my kind of pet peeves, which is, and it also comes back to when you were talking about like this idea of like keeping things simple. It's like, hey, this is what people are seeing at this touch point, Why aren't we saying the same thing at this touch point, We should be, you can't say this, the thing that's winning, you can't really say it too much because it's winning. If it's an aspirational statement of why people are buying and that's not in your rebill email, like, what are you doing? That's not in your cancel portal, like, or a video from the founder talking about this reason why people buy or why you made your product, like you're missing out on opportunities. So I love hearing those examples from you.
Yeah, because there ain't that all the time, right? When you see brands in your space who are scared to death to message any paid subscriber. And there is a certain like bro science logic around that does tend to be accurate in some cases. But then the question is like, okay, what are your cancellation reasons? And is there any way that you can combat those by speaking to your actively paid subscribers?
Yeah, it's I blame the founder chat groups. So what ends up happening is you have like a WhatsApp group or a chat group with 10 founders on it, or maybe it's a meetup or something like that. And you'll have somebody talking about like, hey, just don't send the rebill email. Like it'll protect your churn numbers. Yeah. And it's very, very short-sighted because you don't look at cancellations after the fact, chargebacks. Like there's a lot of like, yes, you might be preserving a little bit of revenue, but at what cost? But the thing that always gets me is like, I guess the best example, I've used this for years and years and years, is I Heart Dogs, because it's kind of like an extreme example. They donate a portion of every sale to feed shelter pets. And their leading opening line in their rebill email is, your upcoming order of XYZ will feed 7 dogs next month. So like, that's one of the prime reasons why people buy. It's the lead that they use in their rebill email. So most of the time when we see brands that are like, don't like doing rebill emails, I will look at what they've tried and it's usually not very good. Like, they just thought, hey, we sent the reminder and people cancel. It's like, yeah, but you didn't remind them why they bought, didn't show them testimonials or quotes. Like you didn't leverage any of the things that you would in a normal email. So of course, 100%. Not to mention the fact that if you have other products that are complementary, like you can get people to you can cross sell. Like we had a client that was just crushing on just upgrading people to the 3-month subscription. Like, hey, you want to save extra money? You're going to buy this the next 3 months. Boom, we pay for the next 3 months. Anyway, so yeah, I'm sure you've seen that too. I'm curious, what are something else that you're seeing that's either bugging you? Like you mentioned a couple of pet peeves already, but I'm curious, is there like a really common mistake you're seeing when your accounts are seeing this? Anything else from a warning for our listeners at home?
Yeah, it's a lack of advanced segmentation, which also drives me insane. It's people sending to like Engage 30 or their entire newsletter, and they don't understand the point of added value. And they also don't understand the point of looking at incrementality in your segmentation. And they also don't understand how campaign segmentation directly correlates to flow improvements, even though they're two separate things. If you know how to work advanced segmentation, a small example of that would be if you were to do win back engaged 180, for example, and you sent that segmentation out in 15 straight emails. And for 13 of them, you got $5,000 in revenue. But for one of them, you got $8,000 in revenue for that one segment. You can immediately take that win back email that was not a win back email, but the segmentation of that campaign send. And you can put that into your win back flow and either A/B test or just replace your lowest performing win back revenue driving email in that. And you're typically over time going to see your RPE on those flow emails go through.
And can you?
Revenue per email.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
So people are doing that.
So just to like a little reflective listening as I'm making sure I understand the examples. Say I'm sending emails I'm trying to get people to come back and buy again. So people that have been engaged, whether they've opened or purchased in the last 180 be 6 months, right? So I'm sending that to that list and I see an email that pops off as from a campaign standpoint compared to others that I've sent. I can take that email and put that into a flow that I could use to say win back cancel subscribers or people like put that in an automated flow for somebody who repurchases that they get that like a month later, 2 months later.
100%.
Okay. That's really cool.
Because that's for all of it. That works for lapsed leads. That works for engaged non-buyers. That works for active paid subscribers. If you are formulating a baseline with your routine campaign segmentation and monitoring what outperform or underperforms through that baseline, all of your flows can be updated based on recurring campaign information to where you're not only A/B testing your flows inside your flows, but your campaign segmentation is giving you more opportunities to put your best performing emails in front of more and more people.
And that's interesting again, because I'm not normally touching so many emails, right? But I'm thinking about that from a strategy standpoint. It does give me more like opportunity to test because I can focus on campaigns and then because flows are often we're updating them periodically. It's not something I'm losing sleep over every single day, but it allows me to take what I see working in that campaign space and start leveraging that inside the flow space.
Yeah. A tangible example is, let's say your team, you work in a supplement company, right? And your team just underwent either another round of like third-party clinical trials, and your email that was sent to prospects, was sent to winbacks, was sent to OTPs that aren't active subscribers. And it said, hey, this clinical trial, we just had a 14% lift in gut biome for someone. And then you saw winback spike, right? Like, wow, this message resonated with the winback audience. Let me take it and put it in versus the generic reasons that we have in the current flow. So it's just a constant level of like, how can I increase efficiency on both campaigns, flows, and in those flows that aren't active flows, they can be your subscription flows.
No, that's fantastic. That's really cool. Eric, as we wrap up, I just want to ask, is there anything else top of mind from you from a strategy standpoint, what people should be thinking about or not? BFCM's around the corner. This episode will come out before then. Just wondering if you have like one last nugget or idea you want to share with everybody.
In the subscription space, and I've seen you talk about this before, the gift with purchase to increase rebill rate or increase LTV is this hot question that people really aren't testing. So it's a really interesting way to navigate. What are the free gifts that you may or may not be giving with your, month 1, month 3, month 12, whatever subscription rebills that either help hurt or do whatever to your margins? And how can those be tested and overcome with a level of exclusivity for longevity to where maybe some of that contribution margin is worth it? If you send a specific item that's like branded or something to people who have subscribed for a year, and does that hit to contribution margin increase your amount of first-time customers because it's just something to talk about? People aren't really testing that. And I think there's a lot of room to test your subscription brand.
Yeah. One of our first clients, when we were first consulting, we ran that test. And I think we had like it was a decent bump. It was like a 5% bump in retention, but the dollar cost of the product was 3x the lift that we got from the margin. So it was kind of like when you show that to the founder and the founder's like, why the F would I want to keep doing this? Like even if looking at like downstream effects. So yeah, I definitely love that. It's like you don't, I will always say there are some things where it's like, sometimes it's just good to do that, right? Like, if you mentioned say we want to do a branded gift at like 6 months or something like that. It's like, okay, well, if you're thinking of that as a a loyalty play in the sense of, we really like you. We want you to rep us. You like us. Here you go. Okay, great. But if it's like, we're trying to prove that this makes month 7 renewal rates go up with some of those things, then it often is not worth the cost. Yeah, finding out. Like,
You get it,
yeah. And I'll say the funny story I had was, this guy, I was talking to a brand and they were getting advised by the subscription app software they were using. And they had created this incredible like applicator, this branded applicator. It was like a skincare tech solution. And the subscription app was telling them to gift it on the second purchase. And I was in like a 15-minute argument trying to explain to them why it should be a gift with purchase on the acquisition side. Like, if it's that good, make it a gift to subscribers. And it took so long to try to get that through. Like, you want to acquire more people. Like, you'll improve your conversion rates. Your CAC will go down. Like, all these things. Anyway, it was just kind of funny to think of. That's where I think the gifting should be used a lot more. Gifts get people to subscribe. Get those OTPs to subscribe with gifts. Get people to not leave at the cancellation flow with gifts, but don't send blanket gifts. No, need to get back down on my soapbox.
I'm fascinated about it.
Absolutely. Well, again, like, I think the idea of testing for incrementality and understanding, like, so much of life and success in business is about intention and like making sure that you have the right way to see that intention is actually working. Like what you said is really, really important. It's really important. Cool. Eric, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. For everybody listening at home, you can find Eric Roush on Twitter, on LinkedIn. We'll have a link to New Standard Co. in our website. If you're looking for help with retention, you've heard a lot of the strategies. So if it's Eric's talking about, you should definitely reach out to him and his team. Eric, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate being here.
Absolutely. That's it for another dose of Subscription Prescription. I'll see you all next Tuesday. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe so that you can get notified when new episodes come out each week on Tuesdays.